morning everybody, good morning, it's JPR, welcome back to another video. A signature move, or a move that can only be learned by one Pokemon or its evolutionary family, can sometimes be the make or break difference. Signature moves have existed since Gen 1, but many have fluctuated in status over the years. Like, for instance, did you know that Petal Dance used to be the Oddish family signature move, but now just about any grass type can learn it. But you know what, even if a move isn't technically a signature move anymore, I'll still talk about it in this video. Mostly because I know if I only talk about the current signature moves, this video would be very short and would also age like milk in a few months, so I'd like to avoid that. With all that being said, let's get into it. But before that, today's video is sponsored by BLOODLINE Heroes of Lithas, a free-to-play game available for both Android and iOS. It's a traditional Western fantasy game with stunning 3D graphics. Choose your own path by raising heirs and their companions in a vast fantasy world. You can further customize your champions by marrying different bloodlines to get a unique combination of any 5 powerful abilities. The possibilities are endless, allowing you to build your own kingdom and economy. Some examples of champions are Karg, the Dragonborn, and Lycanis, a clan that you can obtain for free just by logging into the game. There's also the popular companion Fulgur, and by marrying these demigods together with the Dragonborn, you can create a hybrid heir and further develop the bloodline's powerful traits. And right now, you can obtain a half Dragonborn and half demigod heir for free, so why wait? You can download the game right now using my link down below. And by using my code, you can obtain 1 champion token, 100,000 gold, and 100 diamonds to get yourself off to a great start. Thank you BLOODLINE Heroes of Lithas for sponsoring. Back to the video. I'll start with 2 Gen 1 Pokemon that originally had fantastic signature moves. Parasect has always been a pretty underwhelming Pokemon, especially in Gen 1 where it had 3 double weaknesses since Poison used to beat Bug. To compensate for this, Parasect was given one of the best signature moves in the generation. Spore, a move that nowadays is shared with various other fungus-based Pokemon like Breloom and Among Us. It just makes sense why this move is so good. 100% chance to put an opponent to sleep, far better of an option than Sleep Powder with 75% accuracy, or Sing with a measly 55%. There's a good reason why this is one of the most commonly sketched moves by Smeargle for single battles, which I guess by extension makes Sketch an amazing signature move in its own right. The other Gen 1 Pokemon that had an amazing signature move was my boy, Arcanine, who actually didn't receive Extreme Speed until Gen 2. Better late than never, I suppose. Today, it shares Extreme Speed with a handful of other really fast Pokemon, and really, aside from Togekiss, who is more of a special attacker, you'll see Extreme Speed run on these Pokemon almost all the time. Priority moves in general are extremely powerful tools, but when you double the base power to 80, it becomes so much more viable. Sure, it's easy to look at this move as just beefy quick attack, but that's really all it needs to be. Everything from Arceus down to Belly Drum Linoon can run this move and wreak havoc. But to kick off some of the worst, let's turn our attention to the Squirtle family, who, much like Arcanine, didn't receive their signature move until Gen 2, that being Skull Bash. Now, before you yell at me, yes, Skull Bash was a move in Gen 1 that a lot of Pokemon could learn, but it was a TM. When that TM got removed in Gen 2, that's when it became their signature. Originally a 100 base power 2-turn normal type move, this was just Boneless Solar Beam. And that's a generous description. It's more like boneless and meatless. There's just no reason to run this move at all. Sure, it gives you a defense buff on the first turn, but that isn't nearly enough to make up for the charge time. Plus, what real benefit does Blastoise get from this, who is almost always going to be running exclusively special moves? Gen 6 did buff its base power up to 130, making it one of the most powerful moves in the game, but it's still one that you'll almost never see, both in the main story and competitive. It's garbage. Another signature move that we've talked about on the channel before is Kinesis, the signature move of Kadabra and Alakazam. This is one of only 4 signature moves to remain a signature move in all 8 generations so far, the other 3 being Marowak's Boomerang, Jinx's Lovely Kiss, and Porygon's Conversion. Wow, what an exclusive group, this move really must be something. Yeah, not really. It's a Sand attack with 20% less accuracy. To make this move worse, Kadabra and Alakazam can also learn Flash, which got buffed to 100% accuracy in Gen 4. So for over 16 years now, Kinesis has been one of the most obsolete signature moves ever. Yet somehow it still exists and hasn't changed at all. We talked a bit about moves that change status due to TMs, but what about HMs? Like, did you know that Waterfall used to be the signature move of Seaking in Gen 1 before it became an HM in Gen 2? And it's a darn good one at that, with 80 base power and a 20% chance to flinch. This is a great staple for any physical attacking water type. Although the flinch chance sadly wasn't added until Gen 4, and Waterfall used to be special before the physical special split happened, so poor Seaking really didn't have anything to write home about back in the day. It was just Surf with 10 less power. So great move for everyone else, just a kinda crappy signature move. Two other underwhelming HM moves have also become signature moves since HMs were phased out in Gen 7. Strength is now Machamp's signature move, and Cut was Kartana's, at least until 2 years later when Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee also gave it to Farfetch'd. Moving on to Gen 2, Heracross was certainly gifted with one of the best signature moves for a short time, that being Mega Horn. Pretty much the first viable bug-type attack in the series outside of Twin Needle, which was still exclusive to Beedrill. Though only 2 slots lower in the Pokedex, Octillery certainly boasts one of the worst signature moves. Octazooka is a 65 power move with 85% accuracy, with its bonus effect being a 50% chance to decrease accuracy. It's pretty awful. Almost any time you see a move with less than 90 base power having less than 100% accuracy, you should run for the hills. Octillery can pass this move down to Horsey and Remoraid through breeding, and Graplocked also learns it in Gen 8, so it's no longer a signature move, but regardless, pretty terrible to run on all of these Pokemon. There are just so many better water-type options. Going directly off that thought, Hitmontop's Rolling Kick, which it shares with Hitmonlee, is another pretty bad signature move. 60 power, 85% accuracy, but at least has a 30% chance to flinch. And the Japanese name is Roundhouse Kick, so that's kinda tight. Regardless, not a move that you really want to select over much better fighting options. But wait, Hitmontop doesn't even stop there, because it also had Triple Kick, a move that it now shares with Pheromosa. It's very similar to the newly introduced Triple Axle, being a 3-part move that increases in base power every time it lands. Unlike Triple Axle though, Triple Kick starts and ends with half the base power, going from 10 to 20 to 30. And if you miss any of those, the move completely ends. Since each kick has 90% accuracy, the move dishes out an average power of 47. I would say, dog, just use Brick Break, but in typical Gen 2 fashion, it doesn't even learn Brick Break in that gen. So I'm just going to say, dog, don't use Hitmontop. Gen 3 would begin a pseudo-trend of starter Pokemon getting their own signature moves, with Sceptile, Blaziken, and Swampert receiving Leaf Blade, Blaze Kick, and Muddy Water respectively. Of these 3, Leaf Blade is easily the best, not only just for Sceptile as a strong special attacking grass move in Gen 3, yes, let me remind you that grass used to be special, but also for other Pokemon as an even better physical attacking grass move starting in Gen 4. It's just one of those useful options that makes so much sense as a widespread grass attack, even for non-grass types like Gallade and Sirfetch'd. Even today, it stood the test of time as one of the most reliable physical grass moves in the game. Even most of the newer starters don't have signature moves better than this one. Unfortunately, the former signature move of Hariyama isn't nearly as reliable. Smelling Salts, or Smelling Salt Singular as it used to be called, was a 60 base power normal type move that would double in power if the opponent was paralyzed, but it would cure the opponent's paralysis after the hit. So basically just Wake Up Slap, but for paralysis, and exclusive to Hariyama for a really long time for some reason. It's not nearly as bad as some of the other bad ones we've discussed so far, but it's definitely far too situational for my liking. Hariyama pretty much has to rely on Force Palm's 30% chance of paralyzing to get the full power out of this move, and even then, any other stab fighting move would probably get the job done just as well as this one. Not to mention in Gen 3, Force Palm didn't exist yet, so Hariyama would have to rely on a teammate to set up paralysis, because he couldn't learn Body Slam for whatever reason. It's just one of those niche early game moves that you'll never think about by the time you have 4 badges. But to continue the trend of terrible Pokemon with great signature moves, Volbeat exclusively had Tail Glow in Gen 3, a move that nowadays is a must-have for both Manaphy and Xurkitree due to the insane stat buff it gives. And I suppose if you're crazy enough to use Volbeat, there is no feasible way that you would survive without this move. In Gen 4, pretty much all the signature moves I want to talk about relate to legendary Pokemon. Starting with Mesprit, Uxie, and Azelf, their signature move, Mystical Power, was only recently introduced in Legends Arceus. It's a 70 power move with 90% accuracy that will raise your offensive stats if the user excels in offense, or defensive stats if they're more defensive. This is far from the greatest signature move that Legends Arceus introduced, but I'm interested to see how this move may get translated into future titles. It's rare to see a signature move that both buffs the user and does damage, and I think this could be pretty useful for defensive walls if it branches out to other Pokemon. It's just cosmic power but does damage, so I think it has potential. Regigigas wasn't nearly as lucky though, as Crush Grip is a pretty underwhelming move both in terms of usability and as a signature move in general, since it's basically the same thing as Ring Out, another normal type move introduced in the same generation. It's the same attack with an identity change. Can you even call it a signature move? In case you don't know though, both of these attacks are like inverse versions of Eruption and Water Spout, where the base power is calculated on the opponent's HP rather than your own. The power can vary between 1 and 120. This means that this move is best used at the beginning of battle, but that directly contradicts Regigigas' whole shtick, which is that he sucks at the beginning of battle. I seriously need to know who at Game Freak deliberately sabotaged Regigigas from beginning to end, because this is totally unnatural. Cresselia's signature move, on the other hand, is completely insane. And no, I'm not talking about Lunar Dance, that's just kind of a middle-of-the-road one. I'm talking about the newly introduced Lunar Blessing in Legends Arceus. A move that heals Cresselia 50% of its HP, removes all status conditions, and raises its evasiveness, or obscures the user as the game describes it. Without a doubt, if this move survives the transition to Gen 9, it will have to be heavily nerfed to even be remotely fair in competitive battling. As for Cresselia's counterpart Darkrai, Dark Void was a great move until Smeargle abused its power for evil, got the move nerfed to 50% accuracy, and then said, here you go, my job is done. I mean, in doubles, 50% does imply that you're at least putting one opponent to sleep, but this is Pokemon we're talking about. If I had a quarter for every time I missed a 95% accurate move, I would have many quarters. We don't need to talk about Victini, right? It's pretty well documented just how amazingly destructive V-Create is. Though truthfully, Victini's other, more forgotten signature move, Searing Shot, is nearly just as impressive. With 100 power, 100% accuracy, and a 30% chance to burn, this is an incredibly slept-on attack. And unlike V-Create, you can just fire these bad boys off one after another. The only reason why you don't see this move very often is simply because Victini's physical move pool is way better, including Bolt Strike, U-Turn, and of course V-Create. Even if you do run Special Victini, it also shares Reshiram's signature move Blue Flare, which has 30 more power, albeit at the cost of some accuracy. I think the real problem here is that Victini just has way too many signature moves. And they're all good! Anyway, as for more broken Legends Arceus moves, Lilligant has access to one of the most infamous ones yet, Victory Dance. Game Freak, please God, do not give this to Victini next gen. It does not need it. Victory Dance is basically a physical version of Quiver Dance that also gives the user's other moves a 50% power buff. To say this move is ludicrous is an understatement. Even if you remove the 50% multiplier, this move would still single-handedly carry some lower tier Pokemon. Speaking of dance moves, leave room for Volcarona on the dance floor, because Fiery Dance is not to be forgotten. A base 80 power attack with a 50% chance of raising the user's special attack. It's kinda like Charge Beam, but the baseline for its power is way higher. But unfortunately, the Gen 5 hype train had to stop somewhere, and by somewhere, I mean literally the last Pokemon in the Dex, Genesect. Technoblast has never been a great move, originally having a measly 85 base power in Gen 5 that required specific held items to change its type. And even though its power has since been raised to 120, it's still not really worth sacrificing a traditional held item. Especially since none of the drives actually change Genesect's type, so it can never get stabbed from any of the 4 types. Or 5 if you're a maniac that uses normal type Technoblast. Anyway, Gen 6. Aegis Slash. King Shield. This literally defined the metagame for years. Not much else needs to be said. On the complete opposite end of the spectrum, Helioptile and Heliolisk have one of the most underwhelming signature moves ever, Electrify. Electrify would change the target's normal type attack into an electric type attack for that turn only. This is pretty much only usable in double battles or VGC to give your teammate an electric move, and even there, you could just use a Pokemon that has an electric move. Or, better yet, and hear me out on this, you could use Heliolisk's own electric move instead of wasting a turn changing your teammate's move. This is so dumb, who thought of this? As for Gen 7, there are a ton of signature moves that are very, very obscure. Some of them, like Zing Zap, are actually quite good, a base 80 power physical electric move with a 30% chance of causing flinch. It's just tied to 2 pretty underwhelming Pokemon. Same goes for Photon Geyser, a move that targets whichever the opponent's defense stats is lower. it's just tied to base form Necrozma, which isn't all that great. Now, Double Iron Bash, on the other hand, has the full package. A great Pokemon in Melmetal, 2 hits, 60 power each, and both hits have a 30% chance to cause flinch. This is a dang good attack. Gen 8 is the same way. It feels like nearly everything has a signature move, even Squavit has one. So, to pick out only a select few, I think Flapple and Appleton's moves, Grav Apple and Apple Acid, are both pretty good. 80 base power attacks that lower defense and special defense respectively. Then there's Phalanx's special move, No Retreat, a move that raises all the user's base stats but prevents them from switching out. I'm not sure if I'd strictly recommend this one, but I like the idea of a clutch factor. The rest of this generation's signature moves are decent enough, but if there's one underwhelming pick, I'd say Poltegeist Tea Time, a move that makes all the Pokemon on the field eat their berries early. I mean, situationally this could work, at least in VGC, but I just watched an entire World Championships, and I didn't see a single Poltegeist, so I'm guessing it's not the most popular strategy in the world. Oh yeah, and I just learned that Hatterene has a signature move called Magic Powder, which changes the target to a pure Psychic type. Honestly, had no clue this move existed, and I think I can safely say, this ain't it, Chief. Alright, but as a special treat for sticking around, what about the box art legendaries? Who has the best signature move? Well, I think it comes down to 2 contestants, Ho-Oh's Sacred Fire and Xerneas' Geomancy. Sacred Fire is 100 base power with a 50% chance of burning, making it easily the best physical fire move in existence. It's technically not a signature anymore since Entei has been able to learn it since Gen 6, but it's still an amazing offensive option. While Geomancy is basically 2 Quiver Dances smushed together. With White Herb to offset the turn to charge, this is easily the best stat buffing move in all of Pokemon, and it made Xerneas very problematic for several years of VGC. Honestly, I think Geomancy squeaks it out by a nose. Well, that's about all that I could cram into this video, but rest assured, there are still plenty of signature moves out there, both good and bad. So, who knows, this might be a topic that we come back to at some point, but of course, for you to know about that, make sure you're subscribed. And as always, a big shout out to the channel members, including my newest one, Austin Rivers. Austin, thank you, and all you other wonderful people for your support, and I'll see you guys next time.